What I'm trying to do in the bodybuilding game is simplify exercise and to get away from opposing, conflicting exercises which I've found to exist. For example, you do an exercise until you think your arm is going to burst with the pump. Then in your exuberance, you continue doing more of the same until you realize that it begins losing its pump. Obviously, you should have stopped at the point of maximum pump. Continued effort shocks the nervous system and it resists further stimulation. Otherwise, you might rupture blood vessels. Also, I think it's necessary to get a workout in, say, a 45-minute period. Beyond that, I think your blood sugar level begins to drop and you start working on nerve with a resulting destruction of tissue. I found that 45 minutes of intense, concentrated training was as long as I could go. You have to take the phone off the hook and lock the door. I trained over my head, and I think you should train over your head. I don't mean by increasing the amount of weight. There are many things you can do before raising the weight. If you want more resistance, step up the tempo. Years ago, the only guys who made it were the ones who would have gotten big on any kind of training at all. Larry Scott, on the other hand, is a prime example of scientific training. When Scott first walked into this gym, he didn't look like he had any potential at all. He was about a foot wide. He had motivation and never doubted that he would make it. He was always in front of the mirror studying himself. He wanted to know where his next effort would go. Larry was the best student I ever had. He never argued with me. If he asked a question about exercise and I showed it to him, he went ahead and did it to the best of his ability. It would be ages before he would ask about something new. He had total confidence in the eventual outcome. When Larry first came here, he was a presser like everybody else. Pressing builds front deltoid but not the side, I got him on all forms of lateral raises. Toward the end of his career, he developed a kind of press of his own, where he pressed a pair of dumbbells over his head, lowered them, and swept his elbows forward, and pressed again in a sort of burnout method, never fully extending or flexing the muscle. He also learned how to work his leg biceps with the hack machine. He placed his feet outside of the rack in a kind of ballet stance and did the hacks with his knees out and feet wide apart. He'd do about 6 reps. It gives the same effect as the fencer's lunge, but the glute is less involved in the action. Larry wanted the tapered look like Don Howarth, but he wasn't really built for it. He never worked his thighs much because they were good and grew fast. He worked a lot on his calf muscles. He once asked me how I thought he should train from here on in. I told him I thought he was the Farnese Hercules type, and he should build every muscle to its maximum. I meant that he should work on his thighs, which he could have easily gotten up to 28 inches, but he didn't do it. He didn't want that kind of body. He wanted the tapered build. He couldn't build pecs very fast. His lats were a little fast, but most of his training was arms and delts. He was heavy into nutrition more than anyone I knew. He did presses from the neck and supersetted it with parallel bar dips. In their quest for a small waist, a lot of French athletes developed thick muscular waists. It proves that if you do enough of any kind of exercise for a muscle, it will grow.